ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशम तम नमाम्यहम. We are studying Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and we can imagine there are two parts in it, and we have finished the first part. In the book, if you open at the contents page, you will find the first heading Bhakti Yoga. It does not say it is preliminary or something. But after the 10 chapters which you have read, we find another heading, Parabhakti or Supreme Devotion. So by implication we understand that but we cannot say so. No. Why Swamiji has not given the name is also important. In the first chapter he has put the full Bhakti picture. In the first chapter, in the definition of Bhakti, Swamiji has concluded by telling that the end of the first chapter, if you can open, and that Swamiji says, we plainly see therefore that Bhakti is a series or succession of mental efforts at religious realization, beginning with ordinary worship and ending in a supreme intensity of love for the Ishvara. So, in this first chapter, Swamiji has described the steps right from the beginning till the end. So you cannot say this was preliminary. You see, everything which Swamiji has used or not used also is significant. We see the second heading, but we don't see the first heading separately. So, we understand this point. It is not that first is preliminary and second is Parabhakti. Because in the Upanishadic shlokas which Swamiji has quoted, Shatashatar Upanishad, that is supreme devotion. And in the first chapter, definition of Bhakti, with the help of Narada, Swamiji has given the definition of real Bhakti. So, that is the first chapter. And then we got the philosophy of Ishvara. And then we were told that the aim of Bhakti Yoga is a spiritual realization. So, these are all telling us the Parabhakti parts only. Then he start from the start, and then he starts need of a Guru. So, these chapters, need of a Guru, and then qualifications of aspirant and the teacher, incarnate teachers and incarnation, mantra, worship of substitute and images, chosen ideal, the method and image, these are all in the preliminary part. But in the beginning, in the prayer and in this first chapter, Swamiji has clearly shown, even in the second and third chapter, that love for God is Bhakti. Now in the beginning, love we feel is very, very minimal. And so, it takes the form of what we call ritualistic worship or Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti, that means we have to start with Vidhi Vida. We are given certain rules. We have to follow those rules, how to worship. And so, after we have followed what the Ramanuja has told in the last chapter, all these means when we acquire, then we get. Let us read now the last line of the last chapter which we read. We have read the last line of the first chapter. Now let us read the last line of the last chapter which we read. It is thus that one may begin to learn how to love the Lord. It is thus that one may begin to learn how to love the Lord. So when we have followed all this, then the love for the Lord sprouts in our mind. And this love, I do not want to define it here. Because love is, in the conclusion we shall see that love is based upon identity. Love reaches its culmination when I do not remain separate from God. How that happens, Swamiji will describe it in great details throughout the second part of the book. So, we are entering now, we have learned now, you may think, how to love the Lord, and with this we are entering the second part, Parabhakti or supreme devotion. Para means supreme, and the first Vaidhi, the other name for that is Gauni Bhakti. Bhakti in a secondary sense. So, that was the Bhakti in a secondary sense. The real Bhakti has been shown in the prayer and the first chapter, and now with all this preparation, we are ready to love the Lord. With this, we enter the second part of the book, and what we get in the beginning, the first chapter of the second part, the preparatory renunciation. Here again, we may refer to Narada. He has said among the means of bhakti, the first means is Tattu Vishay Tyagat Sangat Tyagat Cha. Narad Bhakti Sutra tells us that Sadhana Bhakti, Sutra 34, Narad Bhakti Sutra, that bhakti comes to us only when we renounce the objects and the attachment to objects both. So, this is the transition. We may be doing lot of worship and all that, and with the help of that worship, some love for the God has grown. But now, if you have to enter that field of love for God, then we have to start with renunciation. And this renunciation is of various types. That Swamiji will explain here. The preparatory renunciation. Preparatory bhakti is over, but preparatory to the supreme bhakti is renunciation. First step, you may say, or to get the qualification for love, this is the real thing necessary. Let us follow what Swamiji wants to say. We have now finished the consideration of what may be called the preparatory bhakti. Here he tells us clearly. And are entering on the study of the Parabhakti or supreme devotion. We have to speak of a preparation to the practice of this Parabhakti. We have to speak, Swamiji said. That means we are entering the field, but the essential thing to enter is this renunciation. So we have to speak. All such preparations are intended only for the purification of the soul. The soul is not Atman. Atman is ever pure, ever free. Soul is what we feel as our I today. Soul is Antakarana. Soul is our mind. Purification of the mind, and then the Atman will reveal itself. So, soul, English is never the translation of Atman. Purification of the soul. Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the mind, purification of the Antakaran. So, I am reminded of an incident here. In one place, I was lecturing in a big assembly. Anyway, at the end of the lecture, questions were there. And one person asked me that Atman is Nitya, unchanging. Then how do you speak of Atma Vikas? Their purity was not mentioned, Atma Vikas, growth, development of Atman. Then I said that in my talk I have never used this word. But I accept that people use this word. And here Atman does not mean the self or the real Atman. Atman means Antakarana. Atman means what we feel as our reality today. Even body is called Atman, even mind is called Atman. So, then I quoted Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda has described the whole spiritual life as evolution of nature. Write down, important statement by Swamiji. Evolution of nature and manifestation of soul, Atman. Evolution of nature and manifestation of Atman, that is spiritual life. So, this purification is not of Atman, but purification is of mind. Purification is our I consciousness, that requires purification. And so, all these preparations are meant for that purification. Now the first preparation is renunciation. Why renunciation is required? For purification of the mind. When the mind is pure, the love will be felt. So love for God can be felt only in the pure mind. And so this preparation of renunciation is necessary. The repetition of names, the rituals, the forms and the symbols, all these various things are for the purification of the soul. So what is called the Gauni Bhakti or the preparatory Bhakti or the Vaidhi Bhakti, all those actions with devotion to God, with love for God as much as we have, are all for purification of the mind. But after those, the greatest purifier among all such things, a purifier without which no one can enter the regions of the higher devotion, is renunciation. So all these lower forms of purification, so many people do. But unless they have this preparation to renunciation, they cannot enter the field of love. You please remember this. This frightens many. As soon as we hear of Tyaga, the householders shake. Many people who are prone to enjoyment shake. And Swamiji is telling, then for you bhakti is not there. Bhakti yoga, as I was telling from the beginning, if bhakti yoga you have to follow, you must be prepared to renounce. But here renunciation is not like the sannyasi. Renunciation is not the renouncing of home. Renunciation is of the very idea of enjoyment. So, that is why hearing the word renunciation, people are afraid. Swamiji has this experience. This frightens many, yet without it, there cannot be any spiritual growth. In any yoga, in Yoni Yoga, the spiritual growth cannot come unless you renounce the present idea about the world. Our present idea about the world has to be renounced. The Jnani renounces in a different way, Karmi or Yogi in a different way, Bhakti in a different way, but the present concept of world has to be renounced. In all our yogas, this renunciation is necessary. This is the stepping stone and the real center and the real heart of all spiritual culture. Culture means growth. Culture means directed growth. So, all spiritual culture, the real center, the real heart and the stepping stone is renunciation. And then Swamiji comes out with a very strong definition, bold statement. This is religion, renunciation. This is religion. Till we give up our idea about the world, our sense of enjoyment of the world, we have not entered religion at all. We are only in the periphery. We are only in the outside of the field of religion. All rituals taken together do not define religion. Unless the love for God grows, unless there is renunciation, we have not stepped into religion. So, Swamiji, when entering into the Parabhakti, has to use strong words, and so he is telling, this is the stepping stone and the real center and the real heart of all spiritual culture, renunciation. This is religion, renunciation. Now Swamiji explains it. When the human soul draws back from the things of the world and tries to go into deeper things, draws back and deeper things. That means where are the deeper things? Inside us, draws back from going outside. Sana kamayamana nirudurupatvat narajyattot. So, it gives an automatic check to the outgoing tendency. This is renunciation. And tries to go into deeper things. When man, the spirit, what man is? The spirit, the Atman. Spirit word is used for Atman. The word is used for a bodiless reality. Chetan, conscious reality, not material. For that the word spirit is used. And that is why the Adhyatmic life is called spiritual life. The man, the spirit, which has here somehow become concretized and materialized, somehow. Somehow means due to ignorance, due to wrong knowledge, we think that, think is a very ordinary word. We feel, we believe, we are aware of is the best word. We are aware of body as our reality. At the most we are aware of our mind as our reality, but even mind is material, though it is made of subtle matter. Somehow means this thing can never be explained. That is the meaning of somehow. No reason can enter this field at all. How the spirit how the Atman which is spirit, consciousness can become matter, no reason can describe. But that is what is called the fact of life. Fact of life is that I feel I am the body. Fact of life is I feel so and so is my father, so and so is my mother. For the spirit, father, mother have not produced that spirit. Spirit is eternal. Spirit has come from God only. Spirit is a reflection of God. Spirit will go back to God when the love grows. But somehow means reason cannot explain it. That is the meaning of the word somehow. Concretized. Concretized means appears gross, or appears stool, and materialized, becomes matter. Understands that he is thereby going to be destroyed. Automatically, if I am the body, then I am going to die. And to be reduced almost into mere matter. Mere matter means almost and mere matter. Holy Mother has said, body is this much ash. But why almost? Because the spirit is attached to that body. Even at the point of death, when one transmigrates, goes to another body, the reflection of the spirit is attached. Without that there is nothing real. So, Swami is using the words and to be reduced almost into mere matter, and turns his face away from matter. I do not want to be matter. You know, I remember here, H.W. Longfellow's Psalm of Life. Dust thou art to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. He has called it soul. So, then what happens? We want to turn away from matter. We do not want to be two things. We do not want to be identified with matter, and we want to do nothing with that matter. We do not want to enjoy material things. We do not want to become matter. Both sides. And so what we want? We want to go to God. God is not matter. God is spirit. God is the supreme spirit. We have seen in the prayer. God is, and we are God's reflection. So the God's reflection, unless it separates itself from matter, cannot understand that it is God's reflection, cannot have real love for God, cannot go to God. So very clear statements here. Then begins renunciation, begins. So now this cannot happen in a day. Our struggle to get away from matter, our struggle to get away from the enjoyment of matter, this struggle begins renunciation. So the struggle is the beginning of renunciation. And if we succeed in this struggle, we have become all spirit, then that is the real renunciation. Then begins real spiritual growth. So this is the very definition of spiritual growth. How much we feel ourselves to be matter, how much we are away from matter, how much we feel ourselves to be spirit. Now he describes the various yogas, the type of renunciation needed in various yogas, beautifully. The Karma Yogi's renunciation is in the shape of giving up all fruits of his action. Action and its fruits that take place in the material world. And that is my renunciation. I do not want the fruits. So when I reject the fruits of actions, my mind rises higher. My mind rises higher and I go beyond the realm of matter. So this is how the Karma Yogi begins his renunciation. He is not attached to the results of his labor. He does not care for any reward here or hereafter. Without that there is no karma. Karma Yoga does not mean doing karma. We have seen during our study of Karma Yoga. So, no reward, no going to Swarga. This is the Karma Yogi's renunciation. Do action to serve God. Do action to please God. Do action not for any reward. The Raja Yogi knows that the Patanjali Yogi. The Raja Yogi knows that the whole of nature is intended for the soul. Their idea is that Prakriti we enjoy, that means we experience. And the experience teaches us that no enjoyment there. And then we give up that idea of enjoying the nature. And so, why nature is there? For us to gain experience. The very existence of nature, according to Patanjali, is for the experience of the Atma. And when it gets sufficient experience, one comes out of nature. And that the result of all the experiences of the soul is for it to become aware of its eternal separateness from nature. So, in the end we understand, according to Patanjali, we are separate from nature. We are separate from matter in these gross, subtle and subtlest forms. Only to get experience and to understand this, we are at present dealing with nature. The human soul has to understand and realize, soul is mind only here. Atman does not have to understand anything. Atman is ever pure, ever awakened, but the mind which intervenes, the I which intervenes, this I is called Chit-Jada Granthi, the knot which ties the consciousness with matter. It has to understand and realize that it has been spirit and not matter. Through eternity, always we are spirit, but we feel wrongly identified with matter. So gain experience and come out of it. And that this conjunction of it with matter is and can be only for a time. Conjunction with matter. We are not matter, but somehow we feel this body as ours. So conjunction is for a time being. The Rajyogi learns the lesson of renunciation through his own experience of nature. So that is how he has to look to the nature, that it is giving me experience, to finally to make me understand that I am separate from nature. Now the third, the Jnana Yogi has the harshest of all renunciation to go through. As he has to realize from the very first that the whole of this solid looking nature is all an illusion. Solid looking nature. I remember two incidents I have quoted you somewhere. One great sannyasi used to provoke me. He used to say, only for the sake of rational congruity, this big world, Shankar denies. Big world, that is the solid nature. This big world, Shankar denies only for the sake of rational congruity. Jnana Yogi's renunciation is harshest. From the beginning he has to understand that this big world is an illusion. Example, dream. In dream also we have this big world. We have many solid things, but which are not there. And another example I remember is one Indian doing research in physics in America came back for a visit after 7 years. I was in Nagpur ashram. On the ground one brick was lying. He kicked the brick and said, is this also Maya? Solid. So what appears solid to us, is this also Maya? So Jnana Yogi, if one has to become Jnana Yogi, one has to realize from the beginning all these solid looking things are illusion. He has to understand that all that is any kind of manifestation of power in nature belongs to the soul and not to nature. Power goes with consciousness. Atomic power, this power, that belongs to consciousness, please. So, this Jnana Yogi can understand, and he has to understand. He has to know from the very start that all knowledge and all experience are in the soul. Even in Karma Yoga, Swamiji had told that all knowledge is in the inside, so. And not in nature. So he has at once and by the sheer force of rational conviction to tear himself away from all bondage to nature. He lets nature and all that belongs to her go. He lets them vanish and tries to stand alone. This is Jnana Yogi's renunciation. Of all renunciations, the most natural, so to say, is that of Bhakti Yogi. So here, Swamiji is assuring us that we don't have to follow such harsh things. Very naturally the renunciation will come. How? Is that of the Bhakti Yogi. Here, there is no violence, nothing to give up, nothing to tear off, as it were, from ourselves, nothing from which we have to violently to separate ourselves. The Bhakta's renunciation is easy, smooth flowing, and as natural as the things around us. We see the manifestation of this sort of renunciation, although more or less in the form of caricatures every day around us. So for giving examples, he is giving examples in the world. And he tells it is caricature. But through that we will understand the smoothness of real renunciation. A man begins to love a woman. After a while he loves another. And the first woman he lets go. She drops out of his mind smoothly, gently, without his feeling the want of her at all, because he loves another woman. Same on the other side. A woman loves a man. She then begins to love another man. And the first one drops off from her mind quite naturally. A man loves his own city. Now, one example he has given, the other example he gives. A man loves his own city. This is a different type of example. Huh? One object similar to the other objects is one example. One object for a comprehensive object, one object for an expansive object of the same nature is another example. Slowly by example, Swamiji is taking us near. A man loves his own city, then he begins to love his country, and the intense love for his little city drops off smoothly, naturally. Again, a man learns to love the whole world. His love for his country, his intense fanatical patriotism drops off without hurting him, without any manifestation of violence. Another example, grades, fineness. This example was of inclusiveness. Now, example of fineness. An uncultured man loves the pleasures of the senses intensely. If anybody loves the pleasures of senses intensively, he is uncultured. So he becomes cultured. He begins to love intellectual pleasures, and his sense enjoyments become less and less. Do you want an example? Newton was engrossed in his scientific research. He was always in his laboratory. When the food was cooked, the house people used to keep the food there, cover it with another plate and go away. When he finishes his experiment, then he feels hungry every day. Now one day, a friend entered and he saw that Newton is engrossed in his experiment and food is there covered. He waited for a long time. Newton did not pay any heed to him, though he was a friend. Then the friend thought why the food should become cold. So he ate that fruit and covered it by the plate again and went away. After a long time, Newton finished his experiment. Then he came to take food. And when he saw food is not there, he thinks, oh, I don't remember when I have eaten. That much engrossed in the mind becomes no consideration of food. Swamiji has given another example. No man can enjoy a meal with the same gusto or pleasure as a dog or a wolf. We do see some people enjoying like that. But those pleasures which a man gets from intellectual experiences and achievements, the dog can never enjoy. At first, pleasure is in association with the lowest senses. Lowest senses, But as soon as an animal reaches a higher plane of existence, the lower kind of pleasures becomes less intense. It starts like this, less intense. In human society, Swamiji has understood, even in the animal level, in human society, the nearer the man is to the animal, the stronger is his pleasure in the senses. And the higher and the more cultured the man is, the greater is his pleasure in intellectual and such other finer pursuits, artists and all that in their own final pursuits. If you see the expert in painting, drawing and that type of art, they are never careful about their physical appearance even. So when a man gets even higher than the plane of the intellect, higher than that of mere thought, when he gets to the plane of spirituality and of divine inspiration, plane of spirituality, a divine inspiration. Divine means beyond, superhuman. Inspiration means something coming from beyond our physical frame. The love for God is beyond our physical frame, and there it stops. He finds there a state of bliss. Bliss word Pleasure, senses. Happiness, mind. Bliss, spirit. That is the word bliss. Compared with which all the pleasures of the senses or even of the intellect, that happiness, are as nothing. Example, when the moon shines brightly, all the stars become dim. And when the sun shines, the moon herself becomes dim. The renunciation necessary for the attainment of bhakti is not obtained by killing anything, but just comes in as naturally as in the presence of an increasingly stronger light, the less intense ones becomes dimmer and dimmer until they vanish away completely. So when we understand that God is really real, the matter is not real. When we feel attraction to that God which is not matter, when we feel attraction to that God from whom we are not seeking any material gain, that is renunciation. From where it has come? From a higher evolution when we feel love for God. So renunciation results in love. It is the love which has resulted in renunciation. The higher love has resulted in renunciation compared to the lower loves, and when this renunciation takes place, the higher love really functions. They are the mutual relation. So this love of the pleasures of the senses and of the intellect is all made dim and thrown aside and cast into the shade by the love of God Himself. That is the renunciation. The love of God grows and assumes a form which is called Parabhakti. So when this love of God has grown, it has renounced the lower pleasures. That is the main point. Or supreme devotion. Forms vanish. Now, the ritualistic worship itself changes. Forms vanish. Rituals fly away. Books are suspended. Images, temples, churches, religions and sects, countries and nationalities, all these little limitations and bondages fall off by their own nature from him who knows the love of God. Remember what falls off. Forms vanish, rituals fly away, books are superseded, images, temples, churches, religions and sects. Religions and sects go away. What remains? Love of God. This is the grown-up love of God. So this renunciation accompanies the love. Countries and nationalities. This is the religion of my country. How many people die in this? This religion of my country? Is God belongs to your country alone? The God which you pray, as we have found in the Shatashatar Upanishad, does it belong to any country? So this, Swamiji has previously told, this fanatic patriotism vanishes. And nationalities and countries is a geographical denomination, and nationalities is, I am a Hindu, I am a Brahmin, this is nationalities, not the political nation. Political nation, geographical nation is included in country. But the, what you call the ethnic religion, that is called nationality. And these fly away in the love of God. We see this in the Muslim saints, in the Hindu saints, in all those who have gone nearer to God, this form of religion drops away. This love for the country goes away. All these little limitations and bondages fall off by their own nature from him who knows this love of God. Knows is not intellectual, now he experiences. Nothing remains to bind him or fetter his freedom. It grows in freedom. A sheep, no example is given. A sheep all of a sudden comes near a magnetic rock. Sri Ramakrishna has given this example. And its iron bolts and bars are all attracted and drawn out, and the planks get loosened and freely float on the water. Divine grace thus loosens the binding bolts and bars of the soul, and it becomes free. So in this renunciation, auxiliary to devotion, there is no harshness, no dryness, no struggle, nor repression, nor suppression. The Bhakta is not to suppress any single one of his emotions. He only strives to intensify them and direct them to God. So all the emotions are directed to God, so their association with the lower things and worldly things drop down. That is the renunciation. Now this very thing Swamiji has explained in the second chapter. In the first chapter he has given the importance of renunciation and shown that of all the yogis, Bhakta's renunciation is natural because he has started to love God, because he is evolved and he felt what is real and what is unreal. Now, this love for God, how it helps the renunciation, that is in the next chapter. The Bhakta's renunciation results from love. We see love everywhere in nature. Now he explains how this happens, so beautiful. Whatever in society is good and great and sublime is the working out of that love. Understand? Whatever in society is very bad, nay diabolical, is also the ill-directed working out of the same emotion of love. That is important. We see two forces in nature. The force of love, the force of selfishness, narrowness. And Swamiji is showing that the force of selfishness, narrowness is a reflection of the force of love, not otherwise. It is not that love is opposite to hate. It is real that hate is opposite to love. So when the love becomes limited, it becomes hate. When the love is made free, it goes to God. So, Bhakta's renunciation results from love. Love for God makes him drop down all these limitations. It is the same emotion that gives us the pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, as well as the sort of love which goes to satisfy the lowest forms of animal passion, lust and love. The emotion is the same, but its manifestation is different in different cases. It is the same feeling of love, well or ill-directed, that impels one man to do good and to give all he has to the poor, while it makes another man cut the throats of his brethren and take away all their possessions. He loves his own body, so it happens. If you love the spirit, the other thing happens. The former loves others as much as the latter loves himself. The direction of the love is bad in the case of the latter, but it is right and proper in the other case. The same fire that cooks a meal for us may burn a child, and it is no fault of the fire if it does so. The difference lies in the way in which it is used. Therefore love, the intense longing for, now he is trying to define love. Therefore love, the intense longing for association, the strong desire on the part of two to become one, that is love. The strong desire on the part of two to become one, and it may be after all, of all to become merged in one. Two to become one is one way, all to become one is another way. That is God's love. is being manifested everywhere in higher or lower forms as the case may be. So this love is the basis of wrong love, wrongly directed love also. If the direction is proper, it will grow like this. Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. This is the definition of Bhakti Yoga now. It shows us how to direct it. It shows us how to control it. And this control is not stopping, control is channelizing it properly. How to manage it, how to use it, how to give it a new aim as it were, and from it obtain the highest and the most glorious results. That is how to make it lead us to spiritual blessedness. Bhakti Yoga does not say give up. It only says love, love the highest. Other things will drop down automatically. You don't say give up. And everything low naturally falls off from him. The object of whose love is the highest. So the loving the highest or God is the way in which renunciation comes out, if the love is real. So the struggle between two forces comes here. Selfishness and real love. What selfishness does, even the love for God is reduced to earthly benefits. And what real love does, it removes the idea of earthly benefits. I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. Now the language has come thee and thou because closeness, because of nearness. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. What is the definition of beauty? It is not necessarily physical appearance. I will quote something to explain it to you. In the original Bengali Kathamrita, of which we read only the translations in Gospel, Master Masha has suddenly entered Sri Ramakrishna's room and he has experienced whatever is going on there. And then he thinks for himself. If we translate it literally to English, how beautiful is this room? How beautiful is this person? How beautiful is his talk? That is the original. The translators have a rule that if the same verb comes, you translate it in different ways. But the original is like this. स्थानटा की सुंदर, ए लोकटा की सुंदर, तर वाणी की सुंदर. I am quoting this to make you understand what is the definition of beauty. Now I will give the definition. If the experience of something gives me joy, that is called beautiful. Whether my eyes, my ears or anything, what was beautiful in that room? What was beautiful in that person we cannot say. And what was beautiful in his talk? So talk is listening, room is experiencing. But all these were giving joy, bliss to Master Masha. And so he has said all are beautiful. So here we see, I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. We stop here. We will take up this chapter next time. I have certain announcements to make, important announcements. Coming Thursday is Mahashivratri. And the Monday which comes after that is Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. So we will have holiday for these 2 days. Our next class on Bhakti Yoga is next week Thursday, not this week. This week Thursday is Mahashivratri and next week Monday is Shri Ramakrishna's birthday. So these two will be complete holiday for this class. And so our next class on Bhakti will be, you count the date. This Thursday is 11th. You count the date better. 12th. No, Thursday is 12th. 11th.
19th.
11th and 18th. Huh?
19th, I think, Thursday.
11th is Shivratri.
15th is Sri Ramakrishna's birthday.
15th is Shri Ramakrishna birthday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. No, 12th.
17th.
12th
On the
is
5th,
12th.
16th, 17th.
12th is
18th.
Shivratri. No, find out. I'm
18th.
getting confused. You see, today is 9th, na? Today is 8th. Okay. 8th is Monday. 9, 10, 11. 11th is Thursday. So 11th is Shivratri. We will have no class. 15th is Shri Ramakrishna's birthday. We will have no class. Then 18th is the next Thursday. In next week, the Thursday comes on 18th, and that we will have resume the class on Bhakti Yoga. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shantam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam.